Welcome. You're watching Rugby with Rifle, a podcast about all things rugby and life, with your host, Danny Pabone and Rifle Scudder.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Rugby with Rifle, a podcast about all things rugby and life. As always, I'm joined here with my friend Rifle. Rifle, sir, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Danny. I'm very excited. We have, at the time of this recording, literally one more sleep and then a Six Nations start. So, doing very well. Thank you. Very excited.
Yes, that's cool. I'm very excited as well. I was just telling Rifle that on my to-do list is getting a subscription to Peacock. Because apparently that's the only way to watch the Six Nations here in the US at least. And it's very interesting because one thing, just an interesting note that I learned over the past week or so preparing for this episode is that in Ireland and England, I believe as well, they showed these games on the public stations. So that means you don't have to pay for a subscription like here in the US to watch these games. So they take their rugby very seriously. Who knows how long that's going to last, but so I might have to move to England or Ireland to get to get these games free. Although the cost of moving may be more, not worth it. So yeah, it's very interesting. Like Rifle said, tomorrow starts again from this recording the Six Nations series in which the Northern Hemisphere teams play. And those teams are England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, France, and Italy. Italy.
That's
Did I
correct.
get those
Yeah,
correct?
very good.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
learning. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. And
very good.
hence the name Six Nations, because there's six countries that play in this tournament. So today, me and Rifle, well, Rifle is more of an expert than me, but I'm getting there, Rifle.
Sure, you definitely are. Yeah.
So what we decided to talk about, everyone, today is a few rules that World Rugby, which is the governing body of international rugby, they're experimenting with a few rules that they actually started in the Autumn Nation series, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Rifle?
Some of them, yeah, some of the laws they started them. Some of them they wanted to implement then, but they didn't
Okay.
quite. So they tried a little bit of it. For example, we'll talk about it just now about the red card. There was a lot of talk about how they could change the red card, which they have now for the first time, bringing in a new red card. So
Mm.
even with this, as much as you love the game and watch the game, you got to keep updated on the new laws. Because, as I say, this week reading about new laws and looking to make this episode as well, I was a bit behind on the red law. Read and then it's like, oh my goodness, they've changed it since they've changed it again last time. So there's a brand new red card law in play in the Six Nations. So yeah, so you got to keep up with the way they're changing it. Some good, some bad, some you just don't know what they're doing, but it is what it is. So we'll have to just go through the laws quickly. So it will make a bit more sense if you're a beginner to rugby and you're watching a bit of the Six Nations and don't know why the ref is doing certain things. So that's all we're doing today.
Yes, yes. So yeah, it was interesting. Even watching other rugby podcasts and reading other articles, uh, I started laughing. I was like, okay, this one says this, another one says that, and it's like you say, they've changed a few nuances of the rules since Autumn Nations. So
Yeah.
it's like you have to hire a lawyer to
Yeah, almost
to keep up with
to
everything.
understand it. Yeah. And then the other thing is watching the different podcasts. There's so many podcasts now for rugby. So the one that I like is a guy from Australia, Wildcard. And he was talking, and he's very enthusiastic, and he shouts and he gives his opinion. Very good. But he gave his opinion on, and then you've got Tim from Egg Chasers, and he's from England, more calm and collective, typical English guy, and then he gives his take on the red card, and then you listen to the New Zealand pundits, and so all different places from different areas in the world have their own opinion. And should it be what they've done? Should they have just changed it a little bit? Should they have kept it the way it is? But it's nice hearing from everyone just their opinions, because obviously I have my opinion, what I think they should have done. But then when you hear someone else and the reason why they say their thoughts, you can maybe change your mind a little, but it's good. So the last 2 weeks, definitely all around the world, the rugby podcast, New Zealand, South Africa, even Australia, talking about this new red card and the new law specifically for the Six Nations. So it's interesting.
And now here in America with our podcast.
Yeah, I don't know if we are the only rugby podcast in America. I don't know of any other ones in America, to be honest.
Okay, so we'll just assume we are.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know.
uh, it's funny because every time you see whatever podcast, whether it's a sports podcast, news podcast, or whatever podcast, you hear them say, we're the number one podcast in sports, or we're the number one
Yeah,
podcast in news. Like every single one, it was like 40 different podcasts can't be number one in that area.
yeah, yeah. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
There you go. So I'm going to say we're the number one podcast in America. Rugby podcast. There
Which
you go.
might be true. Yeah.
So with that, everyone, we're going to get right to it. So let's bring up our little trusty graphics here. So again, we're going to be speaking about what I call, at least, rules experiment with the Six Nations. So the first one is the 60 seconds to kick conversions. Now, there was a time, there was 60, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I read and heard, there was 60 seconds to kick a penalty kick, but there was no time limit for conversion kicks. But now there is going to be a time limit for conversion kicks.
Yes. So just like you have in the NFL, there'll be a clock in the stadium so the players, the kickers, can also see, and it will start at 60 and obviously go down. And by the time it's finished, you must have already kicked the ball towards the posts. Otherwise, it's not going to count. So I think two reasons for doing this. Number one is, some teams would waste more time. So if you wanted the game to kind of end and you were leading and you didn't want to get the ball to the other team, or you wanted to waste time, you could have the ball and you could put it on the tee and purposefully not put it up right, so then it would fall over, and then you got to replace the ball again. So just one reason is just for unsportsmanlike, like wasting specific time to just absolutely try to take as much time to get the clock going to the end of the game.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest reasons that they did it. And just another one is just conformity, because there wasn't, I don't believe, a set time. So different players have different ways of placing the ball on the tee. And some of them, they're very ritualistic in the way that they kick. You'll see some players, they'll lift their leg once or twice, or they'll look at the post 3 times, or they'll do something. So it wasn't said, okay, you have so many seconds to kick the ball. So how long do I have? Well, it's just, take as much time as you want, kind of. So just to bring conformity to the game as well, so that everyone has exactly the same time. So I think those are two reasons why they've changed that. And it's not a bad law. I think that's pretty good. Conformity is good, and you can't then just waste time for the sake of wanting to win the game and let the clock run out. So that's a 60-second conversion.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, it kind of makes sense because in a situation where, maybe two teams are tied and, there's a couple minutes left and one team is preparing, to kick their convert. They scored a try, and now they're gonna kick their conversion kick. And if there's a minute or two left in the game, then it'll be smart from a strategic standpoint to waste as much time as possible, so
Yeah,
that when you make that kick, there's less time. So now you have a chance of winning the game. So yeah,
yeah,
it makes sense.
yeah. So that's a good one.
Cool. So the second rule that they're continue to experiment with is officials. In past episodes, we have spoken about the line out, and I remember you mentioning, Rifle, that in the line out, the hooker, which is the player number two on the team, when they throw in the ball has to be straight along the imaginary line between the two teams.
Correct.
That was one of the rules of the line out. Now, like we see here, is officials are going to be a little more lenient on the throw, but I remember reading that the only caveat is if the team, essentially the team on defense, does not contest the ball, then the
Yeah,
ball doesn't have to be completely straight.
right. Because as we've done one episode before, you have the meter separation between the two teams,
Mm,
and then the hooker would stand completely in the middle of that, and the ball had to go down the middle. And if the ball was skew, you would have a restart. The
mm,
other side would get the ball in a scrum. So now they're changing that. So that's another rule. As I say, good or bad, I don't know. But you don't have to have it spot on in the middle. Now, obviously, once again, you can't take the ball and throw it, 2 meters skew to your side. That's not going to be. So they're going to have to judge now. So okay, it doesn't have to be straight down the middle, but how far is skew going to be allowed? So they're going to have to look at that. So I don't know. We'll see this. We'll see tomorrow how the refs are going to look at that. How skew must it be before you're going to call and say, okay, that's not straight, and we're going to give a scrum to the other side. So that's one thing about the throw in. And then the 30-second line out formation clock. So what happens there is a lot of teams here also it would be wasting time many times, or a team would take too long just to get their sign or what call they were going to play, and then people would sit and wait, and the team would huddle, and they would talk, and then they go to the line out. So this is good. This is okay. You have 30 seconds from the time that the line out is called. So where the ball goes out, 30 seconds, and then the ball must be in. So you can't take your time, waste time, and talk about who's gonna jump. Is it a fast ball? Is it a slow ball? Is it a number 2 ball, a number 4 ball? Are you going at the back? It's now okay. So now teams are gonna have to, and some teams were very good at that. If I think of Victor Matfield, who played for South Africa, he was a master in the lineouts. That was his thing, and they just had a talk after the autumn nations about lineouts, and he was very good with a quick ball. So he would, while they were walking to the next line out, he would just call a play, and they would stand and the ball would go in. While the other team is still thinking, is it going to be, are they going to throw to number 2 or number 4? The ball's already in. So they were very good with quick balls, but other teams would try and waste time, and just that's not right. So now, as I say, you've got 30 seconds, the ball must be in. So I think that's a good one. It's going to make teams, you got to pay attention now to the call. You got to know exactly when this call comes through, who's the guy throwing to. Is it going to be a lob where you put a long high ball? Is it going to be a quick fast ball? And that all happens when the player calls the play, whoever the play caller is. Okay, this is who we're throwing to. This is what the ball's going to look like. Let's get it in and go. So 30 seconds for that. That's another one that's going to be good.
Yeah, and most people that you speak with who are either, you know, fans that follow the sport or broadcasters that, that broadcast the sport, the majority of them agree that, obviously these rules are implemented or being tested because they want to make the game of rugby faster. And it's interesting because over the past, I would say probably maybe couple of decades or so, the NFL has been going on this journey over the past couple of decades of where they want to make the game faster. And that's
Mm.
why you see, the scores of this game. Actually, in basketball as well. That's why you see the scores of these games have gone up significantly. Um, I mean, in basketball back in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up, teenager, a kid, uh, basketball games will end, 85 to 79. Maybe every once in a while you'll have a team score in the 90s. Now a typical basketball game is like 130 to 115.
Yeah, very
So
high
just
scoring games.
yeah, so it's like 30 to 40 points more nowadays.
Mm.
So it's interesting to see, what path rugby takes if that's going to be the situation as well, where, 10, 15 years from now, you're going to see scores in rugby be significantly higher. So that's going to be very
Yeah,
interesting to see.
a lot of these rule changes are specifically, as we call it, just to speed up the game.
Mhm.
So many times, as I say, even with the line out, you'd wait and then they'd throw skew, then you'd stop, and then you got to call, and then you'd wait. And people are like,
Yeah.
just put the ball in for goodness sake. Then when it comes to scrums, that was the scrums would go down and they'd collapse. Then you got to wait. Then they got to reset, bind, hold, pause, engage. Then the guy puts it in skew. Then and it's like goodness sake, just get the ball in, let's play. So it's one thing that they're just asking is just speed up the game. So that's what I
Yeah.
think they're trying to do with these laws is make the game quicker.
Yeah. Nobody appreciates defense and strategy anymore.
Oh no,
They,
rugby,
they,
some
they,
defenses, I'm telling you.
well, from American sports perspective, I should say is, they want to see action. They don't want to see great defense or strategy. We just want to see action and scoring.
Yeah. In rugby, sometimes the defense is an action. South
Yeah.
Africa a couple of years ago came up with a rush defense, and they would come up so quick so that when the opponents their backline got the ball, the South African defenders would be right on them already, and they wouldn't know what to do. So that was a new thing that they did. Now other teams are trying it and experimenting with it. But defense in rugby, yeah, that can definitely make or break a team. So
Yeah.
it's big in rugby, the defensive side of the game.
Cool. Okay. So the third rule they're experimenting with is protection, or there, from what I understand, there is already protection for the scrum halves, but uh, now they're, I guess, making more protections for them. So I equate the scrum half in this situation to the quarterback in the NFL, where if nowadays if you breathe on the quarterback, you're gonna get flagged and a penalty. It may not be that extensive in rugby now, but as you know, rifle quarterbacks are very protected in the NFL,
Very much
and
so, yeah.
so yeah, and protection during the scrums, mauls, and rucks, and we are going to talk about mauls and rucks in this episode. Briefly touched upon what those are. So yeah, so we'll talk more about this rule when we get to speaking about mauls and rucks. And the fourth rule that they're experimenting with, and this is probably from, like we just mentioned before, Rifle, this is probably the most controversial one.
Definitely the one that gets the most talk about is a 20-minute red card. Yeah.
Yeah. And a red card is for any player that commits a dangerous play, uh, and there's evidence to suggest that they had intent in committing this dangerous play. And I believe the term, in rugby, when I'm watching rugby, there's a term that they use, without, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, Rifle. When someone commits a penalty, they say, "Oh, but the player let up." I forgot the exact terminology that they use.
I know if
Um,
someone does something, they will say that was a deliberate, high
yes.
tackle, or he did something deliberately, and then one would not be deliberate. It was not intended, maybe, mistake, or he
Okay.
held back, or he didn't bend his knees in the tackle quick enough, or no, that was deliberate, and that's dangerous, and, red card. So if it wasn't
Yes.
deliberate, you could maybe get away with it, maybe get a yellow. But if you did
Okay.
something intentionally, they'll say that was deliberate. He did that on purpose, deliberately. You get the red card.
Uh
So I
huh.
think the one of the biggest reasons for this is, if you can remember, in the Rugby World Cup final when South Africa played against New Zealand, two almost the same incidences happened, where Sam Cane, the captain of New Zealand, went in and he had a high tackle, and
Mm-hmm.
he got a red card, and he was sent off for 20. He red card off completely. Sia Kolisi, South Africa's captain, also had a high tackle, but they said that Sia did not on purpose go high. It couldn't have been, any other way. He tried to go down, so he didn't try and tackle high. So he went off, but he just got a 10-minute, a yellow card. And people were
Mm.
saying that's ridiculous. Sam Cane goes off, or, he does something, he gets the whole game. Sia Kolisi only gets 10 minutes. So that brought a lot of discussion on, was it right to send Sam Cane off? It's a World Cup final. It's such a big game. It was in the first couple of minutes of the game. So for the rest of the game, New Zealand only has 14 players. South Africa has 14 for a while. Then they're back to 15, So there was a lot of and ah about what should they do about those red cards. So now the 20-minute red card is brought in to decide, should a player, maybe it wasn't on purpose, maybe it wasn't that bad, so he stays off. It was really silly thing to do, but not on purpose, not intentionally. So 20 minutes he's off. Another player can come off. He can't come back on himself. Another player will take his position. Or no, that was deliberate. That's just bad. You're off for the whole game. So I think that's where this started becoming a real important talking point, was after the Rugby World Cup final.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting. And the caveat to this rule, and again, this is from what I've read and just listening to different people. Apparently, the caveat to this rule is, if the on-field official gives them a red card, they're out for the whole game, for the rest of the game. That particular, and the team is down one man for the rest of the game. However, if the referee gives a yellow card in the game, and the review officials determine, hey, this may be a red card, let's take a look at this. It is the review officials that determine if it's a 20-minute red card, and not the on-field official. Again, that's from what I read. I don't know if that's what it is, but that's from what I read. I may be wrong, but that's the caveat to this 20-minute red card.
Yeah, what we call them in rugby is, we say, the TMO.
TMO.
So
Okay.
that's a guy off the field. So they sit literally in the stands. They've got boxes, and they have, just so many television in front of them with
Mm-hmm.
different angles from every side. So when the player is sent off with a yellow card, he'll go sit in the sin bin. He'll sit in his chair there by himself, and then the TMO, they will review that play.
Okay.
And then when they have made their decision, they will speak to the ref and they will let the ref on the field know this yellow card has been upgraded to a red, because we can see there's no doubt this guy did that purposefully, this was wrong, this is so, it's a red. Or they will let the ref know it will stay a yellow, and after 10 minutes he can come back on the field. So the
Okay.
TMOs will decide that after they've taken their time in really studying that incident, and they come to their conclusion, they will tell the ref on the field what the final call will be.
Okay. Very interesting. So yeah, so it it's again similar. I'll always reference this with the NFL, and actually in college football as well. Just switching over to college football, there is a penalty known as targeting, and that's when uh, uh, a defender leads with their helmet and hits a person carrying the ball with their helmet in above their chest.
Mm.
That's called targeting in the college. Now the thing is, you could hit the person, above the chest, and it be accidental. So you still get a penalty, but you will not get thrown out of the game. Now, if it wasn't incidental and they could tell without reasonable doubt that it was intentional, then the team gets a penalty, and the player gets disqualified from the game.
Yeah,
So
that's basically
it's
how it
very
is. Yeah.
similar.
Yes, very much so. Yes.
Okay.
Because there are times, a guy runs with the ball, and as soon as he gets to you, he goes down. And obviously, if
Yeah.
he goes down and you were about to tackle his waist, between the waist and the chest, but he goes half a meter down, you're going to now hit him in the face because he, at the last moment, went down. So you weren't intentionally going to try and smack him in the face. But when he went down, you were already committed to the tackle. That's different than someone just going and high tackling someone and just, straight stiffing arming, trying to break his neck when he's got the ball, do something like that. So that will be the difference is like, you didn't do it on purpose. It happened, watch what you do. But, oh man, that was really terrible. There you go. Change room, you gone. So that's what the guys at TMOs, they have to look at from every angle, and they have to decide, was it on purpose? Could he have done something else? Could he have pulled out of the tackle? Was he already committed? All of these kind of things come into play, which make it very difficult sometimes to say, wow, that was, there's always a lot of vigor in the game. There's always a lot of emotion when you're playing. So it's sometimes difficult to make those decisions, and hopefully, because that was a huge talking point as well, as just sometimes the TMOs would overshadow the ref, and the ref would be playing, the game would go on, and then they would speak from the TMO box and say, oh, no, 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 you got to go 3 plays back. There was a forward pass. The guy knocked the ball on 3 plays ago. Now you got to go 50 meters back, and the ref didn't see that. So people were saying the TMOs just have too much power, and just let the game flow. If the ref doesn't see it, tough luck, but let the game go on. So that's another talking point. So, as I say, some of these rules one wonders about, but that's the way it is now. They refer it to the TMO. They'll have to decide 10-minute, or, oh my goodness, no, that's a definite 20-minute, or that's completely, the ref himself can say, no, red, you off, because that was a deliberate high tackle. So we'll see how it works out.
Yeah, and there has to be a balance of having review officials and letting the referee do their thing. Because
Right.
it's like you said, if, I mean, in any sport, when you have review officials, you could have 80 penalties in a game.
Right. Yes.
If the review official says, hey, technically this is a foul or this is a penalty, we need to stop the game.
Yeah.
You could have like 80 of those every single game because they're, like you said, there's referees miss things. They're humans.
Yeah.
So you have to
But
have
yeah.
a balance between having review officials doing the job, but also letting the referee on the field or the court or whatever do their job and try to keep the game moving
The game flowing.
along as
Yeah.
to the best of their ability. Yeah.
Because you've got the referee on the field, and then you've got the two touch judges. So there are three people, the one guy on the one side looking from his angle, the other guy on the other side of the field looking from his angle. So you've got two different viewpoints there, if they can see everything that's happening. And then you've got the ref right there as well. So one should think that between the three of them, they can come up with, okay, we saw it. This is what happened. Do you agree? Do you disagree? But unfortunately not. Now you got to go to the TMO and they got to sit and look and decide and ah, and then come back. And so it's all. However, that's the way the game is played and the rules are right now. So we just got to go with it.
Yep. That's how it is. And
Yeah.
for all you well, in rugby, as everybody knows, you play offense and defense. It's not like most American sports where you have one set of group of players that come in for defense and then another set of group of players coming in for offense.
Yeah.
Rugby, you play offense and defense.
And these rules are going to force players to become even fitter.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the game speeds up like this, previously, if you wasted a whole minute at a line out, you could breathe for a minute and get your breath back. Now you can't because, I don't know if they're going to give a free kick to the other team or what have you, but by 30 seconds, that ball has to be going. So it's just going to speed up the game. So that's less time for guys to catch their breath. So, I mean, the physical aspect of the game and your fitness level is going to be taken, even to next level. So that's going to be interesting to see.
It's like rugby is not physical enough.
Yeah, make it harder.
Yeah. So, since we mentioned the scrum and line out, and these are things that we have spoken about in previous episodes, I believe it was episode 3, either 2 or 3. So if you haven't seen that episode, everyone, go check that episode out. So we have the scrum and the line out, since we mentioned here in the rules in the previous slide. And we spoke about the line out of you know, officials being more lenient on the throw, just as long as it's not egregious, like we have spoken about. And then the scrum here that we also have spoken about, and with this slide is just serving as a reminder to everybody watching. And I know you had mentioned this before, Rifle, you love the scrum because that's one of South Africa's strengths is the scrum.
Correct, yeah. It's very difficult if your team is being beaten up front, if the other team is dominating your forwards. And just for those who are new, your forwards are number 1 to number 8. They call the forwards. They're a pack of forwards. And then from number 9 to number 15, they call the back line.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a scrum will happen if a team knocks the ball forward, because in rugby, the ball is not allowed to go forward from your hands at all. So if the ball goes forward, if you pass the ball, but you pass it forward, or someone passes the ball to you and you knock it forward, or the opposing team kicks a ball to you and when you're catching it, you knock it forward, the other team will get the ball and they will put it into the scrum. So the scrum will where the 8 forwards from the one side will push against the 8 forwards from the other side, and they will see who can get the ball in that scrum. So there are so many rules and laws. I mean, we'll be talking for an hour if you just talk about the front row, because you're not allowed to go in skew, you're not allowed to pull down somebody. So there's so many rules to the scrum. But just for beginners, just when you watch a game to know what's happening, a scrum happens when the other side knocks on the ball and then your team gets to put the ball in, and that will be the number 9. He's called a scrum half. He's the half back between the scrum, the forwards and the back. So he's the half back, and he will put the ball into the scrum, and then the guys will just push, and it's very easy to see. That's just the basics of a scrum. And then a line out on the right-hand side there is if the ball goes out of play. So if it goes what we call the touch line. So if the ball goes over the touch line, whoever gets the ball, they will throw the ball into the line out. And you'll see there, and we said there's a meter in between the two players. The line out happens from the 5-meter line to the 15-meter line. And that's where the guys will line up next to each other. And when the player throws the ball in, it will be the number 2. Most of the time, 99% of the time, it's the hooker. And then your team will try and jump and claim that ball. And then the back line of both teams have to be 10 meters away from the line out. They can't come up closer. There's an imaginary line, and that's the offside line, and that's 10 meters away from the line out. And when the ball comes out and the scrum half passes the ball, now you can go forward, and now you can come up closer to the line out. But that's just the basics, because as I say, we can talk for a whole hour on rules and regulations on any of these, a scrum and the line out. But that's what's happening when the guys are pushing and when the guys are jumping for the ball. That's called a scrum on the left and a line out on the right. And that's good for now. If you watch the Six Nations for the first time, and you understand that, you'll do well.
And speaking of the scrum half, which is number 9, and again, just to remind everybody, you have, and again, you have 23 players on the rugby team, 1 through 15, which are what we would say are the starters. And then 16 through 23 are your reserve players or your bench players. And just to remind everybody, numbers 1 through 15, that position has the same number on every team. So a number 9, if you see a number 9 on a rugby player's jersey on their back, that's always going to be the scrum half, and etc. and etc. So that leads us to rule number 3, like in our first slide about the protections for the scrum half. That leads to us, oh, sorry, ran a little past that, talking briefly about what a ruck and what a maul is in the game of rugby. So, generally speaking, the ruck happens after a tackle of the ball carrier has occurred. And essentially, and again, generally speaking, essentially, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, Rifle, but I've done my homework, and hopefully I've done my homework well. So essentially, the ruck is you have the ball carrier tackled, okay, and a player from the ball carrier's team and a player from the defense come over the tackled player for positioning, because the defensive player for a short amount of time has the ability to take the ball away from the team that has from the offense. And that has to happen before the player with the ball puts the ball back and lets go. Because remember, Once you get tackled, you have to let go of the ball. You cannot hold on to it. So that's essentially what the ruck is. Can only happen when the ball carrier is tackled. And I'll let you explain the other caveats, rifle, to this
Sure. Yeah, that's
play.
basically it. Because once again, I mean, you can go get deep in the weeds here. Another reason why the ruck can happen is, for example, if a team kicks the ball and I catch it, and without anyone being close to me, I slip because the field is wet
Okay.
and I'm down on the ground. And now I've got to place the ball. A ruck can also form there. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be tackled. But when you go
Okay.
down with the ball and you have to let the ball go, because you correctly said, if you go to the ground and you hold the ball, the ref will blow and you will get a penalty against you for holding. So in rugby, you're not allowed to lie on the ground and hold the ball. As soon as you go to the ground, you got to put the ball behind you, because remember we said in rugby the ball can't go forward from your hands. And as you put it behind you, you have to release. But if you release the ball and an opponent is standing right there, the one who tackled you, and you put the ball down there and none of your team is there to come and help you and get the ball, he can steal the ball and pick it up immediately, and then he can run with the ball. So that's super important. That's why you want players very, very close to you so that you never get isolated. Because if you do get isolated and you slip or you get tackled and you put the ball behind you, the opposing team can steal the ball. They can pick it up and then it's rightfully their ball. They can do that. So that's what happens at a ruck. And now other things like if other players do come in to join the ruck, they can't come from the sides. They have to come from the back of the ruck. So there's also, like we saw at the lineout, there's an imaginary offside line. So they have to come from behind that line. And when they join the ruck, they have to join with their whole arm. They have to put their arm around the player. They can't just hold on a little bit. And now that their arm is joined, now they can push the other team over and try and get the ball back. And I think that's about enough for there, because this is
Yeah.
all, oh my goodness, what's happening there. So when you
Yep.
put the ball down, you got to put it behind you. The opposing team has the opportunity, if nobody's there, to immediately pick the ball up and take it, and then they can start playing with it. That's a ruck, when someone goes to the ground.
Okay.
And I would say the biggest difference between a ruck and a maul is almost the same, but a player doesn't go down to the ground. A
Okay.
maul
So
happens when
now
the
that
team stands on their feet and the ball is in between the two teams, but no one is on the ground. That's the biggest difference between a ruck and a maul. And one thing that you'll all, not always, but you'll see the refs are looking for, one thing that you're not allowed to do when the maul is happening, because one team will be pushing the other team, and you'll see the team that is getting pushed back, they now need to try and stop the team from pushing them. And many, many times they will pull someone down, which is illegal, and you will get a penalty against you. So that's one thing that can't happen in the ruck because you're not moving. But in the maul, as the team is moving, someone will come many, many times and they will try and do it without having the ref see. But you can definitely see when someone's pulling someone down to try and make the maul end. That's a no-no in the maul. You have to push them back or some other way but you can't get it to stop by pulling the opposing team to the ground. You'll get penalized for that.
yeah, and another uh uh s- and the two things that are the same between the ruck and the maul is when, like you had just mentioned, a player has to join from behind, can't join from the side,
From the side, can't,
and
yes.
you in a maul and in a ruck, you have to be bind
Bound.
bound
Right.
to your teammate. And
Yes, with your whole arm.
yes, with your whole arm. So you can't be like in football pushing and not be bound to a teammate. You could be bound to a teammate and then push just as long as you're bound, but you can't be just pushing with two hands and not be bound to your teammate.
Right. Yeah. So,
Yes. And
and as I
and the
say, yeah, also the refs have to look because it's very difficult because you're not allowed to, pull someone down, but sometimes players will fall down on purpose, go down. So that's very difficult to sometimes see, did
yeah.
that guy fall on purpose or could he just not handle it and he went down? So you got to see, so that makes it a little bit iffy here. Sometimes you'll hear the ref say, going down, and you'll see the player like, I didn't, it wasn't on purpose. So that's another thing that they got to look at
Yeah.
and try and make sense of in that very heat of the moment. They got to blow and say, okay, that's not right. Or, hey, no, you had the guy by the jersey pulling him down. That was definitely trying to collapse the maul, penalty against you. But the two in a sense of you got to join from behind that offside mark, and you got to be bound with your whole arm. Those are the same. Ruck can happen on the floor when someone slips or they get tackled, and the maul is a team is standing up. So the ball is not on the ground. The ball is in a player's hand and being pushed by the other team trying to get the ball.
And another thing that I found interesting is within the mall, you could have the team who possesses the ball pass it amongst each other.
Yes.
So that's another thing that's obviously different from the mall and ruck is because the ruck, obviously, you're on the ground, you have to let go of the ball. In a mall, you have the ability to pass it amongst each other if you're within the mall and you're
Right.
bounded to your teammates
And obviously the ball has to, when you do pass it to a teammate, it has to go backwards.
backwards.
You can't pass it forward. So here, this is what the teams do. So this is South Africa against, I'm guessing, Italy there. There you can see the small guy with the blonde hair. That's our scrum half, Faf. And the guy in front of him there, that's our hooker, Bongi Mbonami. So they've passed the ball all the way. So the guy's in the front there. You can see the guy's got his back against the team, but he's bound. So he's, with his back, he's trying to go forward. The other guys are all bound. They're pushing forward, but here you can see Bongi at the back. He's got the ball there in one hand. So he's bound. So his hand is on, fully bound, but he's got the ball in the other hand. And now when the team pushes far enough or they see they can't go any further than many, many times, like Bongi there, he'll come around the side with the ball emerging, trying to score a try. So that's what's happening in that game over there.
Cool, cool. So now, everyone that you know, well, have learned of the various rule changes or experiments uh, that again started with the Autumn Nations series in this past November of 2024. Some of the rules that they were experimenting, like you said, rifle, have been scratched out. They're not going to be doing them anymore. And there's been some slight adjustments to rules that they're still experimenting with. So it's going
Right.
to be very, very interesting to see how these rule changes play out in the Six Nations over the next few weeks or so. It's going to
Yeah.
be pretty cool
Another
to
one
see.
that I think I heard them say is that the ref on the field, when he makes a call, he will actually say, because now they're trying to give them microphones. So they'll
Okay.
be mic'd up and then they will say, okay, number two, collapsing the maul, so penalty against blue. So they're going to, so that the people who are watching can understand what they're doing. So you're sitting there, and the next thing you see the arm go up, and the other team falling 10 meters back. What did they do? Why did that happen? It should be now that the refs are actually going to say, blue two collapse the maul, so red is going to get the ball. That's what they're going to do. So people said that would be amazing because now they will give an explanation for why they made a call. So you don't have to sit and guess why. The only problem now is some stadiums, the speakers are literally way better than others. So when the ref speaks, you can hear clearly, oh, that's what the ref is saying. And then in other stadiums, it's going to be like you're flying on an aeroplane where you think this aeroplane costs so much money, they can't put proper speakers in here. Because when the pilot speaks, you can never hear. I can't. When you know, ladies and gentlemen, he's just going to land sideways for degrees. You know, what did he just say? So that's what people are talking about. Just for goodness sake, just get proper speakers in all the stadiums so we can hear when he makes the call. So, but I think that's another thing that they're going to try, is having the refs actually say why they blew the whistle and the reason for that. So that would be good.
So there you go, stadium owners. Rifle's telling you to invest in better speakers.
Rifle's asking nicely, please get nice speakers.
This Rifle always causing trouble.
They definitely make enough money. They can buy new speakers, that's for sure.
Yeah, they do. They should. They could definitely invest in better speakers.
England can sponsor the rest of the Six Nations and all the rest of the world with new speakers. They got enough money to do that.
There you go. Make the English pay for it.
There we go.
So there you go, everybody. Again, this episode is recorded the day before the Six Nations is to start. So it's going to be very exciting, Rifle. And now, everyone, if you ever catch a rugby match, which you should, because it's a great sport, you're going to understand. That's why I'm happy that I'm going to be watching the Six Nations and actually understand what's going on.
Yeah, this is
So
your
that's going to be
first
pretty
Six
cool.
Nations that you're going to pay attention to and watch and understand and, you know, feel the game. Not just watch it, but feel it.
Yes. And as mentioned before, I'm an avid sports fan. So adding another sport to my repertoire, that may be a good thing and it may be a bad thing.
It's a good, because now that you got rugby on top, you can throw all the others away. That's okay. It
Yeah,
doesn't
but like,
matter.
I don't need all these paying $200 in subscription streaming fees because I don't watch other
Exactly, yes.
sports.
You got rugby, you're good to go.
Yes, yes. So with that, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode and I hope you've learned something about the game of rugby. It's going to be a great Six Nations. And Rifle, thank you again, sir.
Very
And
welcome. Thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully I made sense in everything that I said. We'll see how it goes during the competition.
yes. And I know, Rifle, you had mentioned that let the best team win, but Rifle only says that because South Africa is not playing. So
Don't have to give my
if
secrets away, Danny.
if South Africa was playing, obviously he would say let South Africa win.
Most certainly.
So again, thank you everybody for watching, and Rifle, thanks again, and until next time, everyone, take care.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you so much. Stay well.
Thank you for watching this episode of Rugby with Rifle. Remember to press the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet to support this podcast.